Talk a little bit about coordinated fire attack, and one of the places where the rubber really meets the road for a lot of fire departments is basement fires. There's a lot of places in the country that don't have basements, but for those of us that do, these are the ones that make or break fire companies, because it needs to be a coordinated attack.
Absolutely.
And from my standpoint, these were the big aha moments as a young firefighter where, hey, the standard just pull the line down the hall and put the fire out.
DNA.
All right.
Does not apply.
Right. So all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I know why those other seasoned guys are on the trucks, and why they're doing what they're doing matters quite a bit. So some of the different things about basements around here, typically it's flat land, there is no walkout. So you're going down the chimney to put these out. And the other is that chimney's usually more like a ladder than it is a stairway, meaning that it's very steep. Treads are sometimes usually open, and that the ceiling height is usually less than 6 feet. So these are all factors that really make basement fires a lot more tricky.
It's not always a straight run stairway either. You may go down
That damn half
2 or
landing.
3 or 4, right. Go to a half landing, make a right angle, and then go down more. You might hit that and then have to step down into the basement that way too. So we had one of those on Warner Road, our old stomping grounds, one afternoon, and fire rolling up the stairway at you. You got yourself a teamwork operation, let's say that, okay? And one of the things about basement fires in the scenarios that you're talking about, the whole house above is exposed to fire extension. Whether it's going by way of the exterior walls, the interior walls, the stairways, the shaftways like your heating ducts, your electrical or plumbing runs. So this is the problem with basement fires. The whole building is exposed above that fire. So it's really a very critical, a very challenging fire that we deal with. Attic fires, they're up there, okay? The rest of the house is below. We can come up through the rest of the house to get to the attic. This, we're coming down, as you say, into the chimney. So once again, it's a teamwork operation. You don't throw the hose lines on the stairway or the floor above. You don't push the hose to the nozzle man. The nozzle man's got to make sure that, especially if the fire's coming up the stairway at you, you got to start hitting it from one location and let the power of that stream hit that fire first so you can get down. One of the old axioms about attacking a fire in a basement like that is that you want to get down to the basement floor as quickly as you can. Well, that doesn't mean you run down, because if something happens, let's say you run down, the fire was really behind you as you go down the stairs, and here your hose gets burned through. So you see, this is the whole thing about that. That's happened in fire departments before. That's a really thing. You can't see anything, or you got the fire. It's like one or the other. Okay. The other thing is having knowledge of building construction, having knowledge of your stairway location, having knowledge of your utilities. And that's the thing about in older neighborhoods and cities where you have the gas meters in the basement, there's generally, I'll say generally because we got fooled one time. Generally the gas meters are found on the wall of the basement that's closest to the street.
Right.
After the gas line runs, and it was the shortest run for the plumbers to hook the gas line to the house from the street. Well, again, you take some older buildings that have been remodeled, and we found a guy who did his own plumbing work and moved the gas meter back deeper into the basement because he was doing some work down there and went totally against general practices.
Right.
So this is what you can run into down here, okay?
So let's focus on those initial actions. The line's coming off the engine. We've got the appropriate size line. We've got the right size tip. That first initial coordination of venting in front of the attack line.
Okay.
You've got those small casement windows. Question, do you take them all? Do you take one that seems like it's most likely closer to the seat of the fire? What about ventilating the first floor? Where do you have them start, Jeff?
Well, let me get this, well, we're gonna put a platform in here. Okay. And we'll put the fire over here. Okay. Okay, so, all right, as we said before, what was that?
I said that fire icon kind of looks like the coronavirus.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah.
These are the jokes.
Whenever you can, get your hose line in position to come down the stairway and attack the fire, okay? Here's the fire over here, this is a basement window here, this is a basement window here. And you were talking about earlier, what you had learned about taking basement windows. As we said a second ago, it's either gonna be the smoke and the heat is coming up the stairs at you, or it's gonna be the fire coming up at you. And where is it coming from? That's the key, you know? But that's also why you have to practice, have an idea of having that line, and by the way, don't push it down with a fog. If you have fog nozzles, that's fine, as long as you're getting the right gallons per minute, but use the right stream setting. In this case, the straight stream setting, and like we say with practically all structural fire attacks, straight stream setting to attack a fire. If you blow a whole bunch of air down here, basement fires don't vent. And if they do, it's usually after the fact that you've gotten down there. So you have these little windows here and here on either side of the basement.
Yeah.
And of course, there's not much to push ahead of you. So that's one thing you want to do to prevent yourself from getting steamed and burned that way. And believe me, if you have a fog nozzle and you blow that fire around, this thing about not pushing fire, well, that's when that theory goes out the window, literally, okay? It comes right back to you going up the chimney, because it's got nowhere to go. So, okay, so, we get in here. This window here, don't take it at that point. Especially if you don't know where the fire's coming from, or the volume of fire may be such, because if you take this window out and you draw that fire over this way, okay, well, here again, you could possibly be in danger of cutting yourself off from your means of egress. You could also be in danger of burning your hose line through, okay? And this is the whole idea, like with Manuel Freed and William Clark and all these other people, the Warren Kimballs of our lifetime, when before us, always would say, you extinguish the fire as you go. Don't run in there so fast that the fire is behind you. You know, it's almost like that thing with, what's his name from France? The guy who, Napoleon, you know? He went in so fast, so far, so deep, that when the enemy got behind him, cut him off from his, safe egress, and that's how he lost his power and so forth in his war. So anyways, that's the same thing that can happen in firefighting. A little bit of useless knowledge there.
Yeah, thanks for that.
So, okay. But the other thing about a house like this is you have balloon framing, okay? So we have, no, that's not gonna work. Okay, you have these older buildings, you have stud walls. Again, you have balloon framing, which means the basement or the sill plate starts here and ends up in the attic. Okay, so let's just take that guy right up through. Okay. The thing about getting a quick knock on this fire and opening this up and getting another line here and maybe another line here, man, that's a mandatory thing. If you've got buildings like this in your response district, your engines and their hose beds should be set up to pull multiple hose lines just for this situation right here. Okay? I mean, you know, once the fire starts to move, and it gets up into here, okay? In a lot of cases, fire departments have gotten the line in, they've hit the fire, and next thing you hear them calling is that, hey, we got fire it looks like it's coming out of the attic. And that's what happens. The fire has completely bypassed everything in between here, and now it's mushrooming up here in the attic space. Well, you don't withdraw this hose line to go after the fire here when somebody above you says, hey, we need a line here on the first floor. You've got to hold this position here. It goes back to what we talked about in one of our previous barn talks about placement of hose lines and why their position and holding their position is critical. Because now you're going to have a crew working here, and you got to lay your lines in succession. Because if you don't, if you put a line up here or a line up in this attic, but you don't put the fire out down here, these firefighters can become trapped. And again, that thing about, you know, their hose lines and what happens to them and so forth, very critical for their safety. And that's where coordination, you know, we talked last night also on the Senior Man Show about the IC, you know, pulls out his card, you know, looks like a shopping center or a grocery store card. Yeah, I think it's something like blue or purple or something like that. Puts it on the dashboard, you're in command with your headphones and stuff on. No, you gotta look, and you have to have a very good idea about where your people are, what they are doing, what the fire conditions are, and you should be reading that fire. You should be in coordinated communications and coordinating their movements and so forth. Understanding this fire.
What about just identifying basement fires? That this is where, I guess, inexperienced company officers or firefighters get in trouble, where they show up and they're looking at, okay, there's a lot of smoke showing, no fires breaking out yet. They're getting the line off. What are some of the key points that scream, I'm a basement fire?
Usually you're going to have smoke showing from all the different floors if it's already up here. Okay, you'll have smoke showing from the eaves. You might have smoke puffing out around the window frames, because the window frames in the second floor are the same as the window frames in the first floor, and they go right down to the basement sill plate. So because the smoke is pushing out in there and so forth, you'll have smoke here and so forth. And I'm talking about an advanced fire operation right here.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, you've had fires where they've been small in nature here, but they got into those open stud channels, and they traveled quickly without any anything to stop it. You know, no insulation, no compartmentation there, like a top plate and a bottom plate. Mm-hmm. We had an incident one time many years ago. It was wood frame, side by side, double deckers, you know, conjoined with a center wall, bearing wall. But it was old construction. I think the place was built probably, I'm guessing probably 1900 or sometime like that. Fire starts over here, and we're fighting fire over here because it went up and over, up and over. And this is how fire moves throughout a building. And if we don't get the guys in there with the hose lines, again, this is 1 3/4 work. You know, when we're talking about moving lines into these types of structures, it's 1 3/4 work. But again, we make that thing 1 3/4, 15/16. And if you're going to use a fog nozzle, again, we're not anti-fog, but at least use something like that 50 PSI fog tip that throws 175 gallons a minute. Marry it to a 15/16 break apart. That way you got 50 pounds nozzle pressure for either tip, the fog tip or the solid tip, whichever you choose to use. John can tell you, when I was on a job, we would go to fires, you turn the corner, we're talking in a cab. Fog tip comes off, we're going 15/16, because we knew that was, boom, our knockdown power. And we had a good reputation of knocking fire down before, in many cases, the rest of the assignment would be coming in. So that's the whole thing about this right here. That initial line, locate, confine, extinguish. Basement fires are tough, there's no question, because like we said before, the whole building above the fire is exposed.
And it's a confined space fire. I mean, it's
very much a confined space.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you then about coordination of your companies and tools This isn't a situation where guys gotta walk in and, oh, hey, we got a whole bunch of smoke in there, we need some tools. No, your guys, whoever they are, should have those tools in their hands. Pre-game tool assignments, one guy's got the hook and an axe, another guy's got a hook and a Halligan, one guy's taking care of the roof. And that's the other thing about these fires. They're gonna find the open shaft and take advantage of it. Remember, fire travels the path of least resistance, okay? And that's exactly what happens in this case right here. If you don't have the hose line coming down the stairwell, this fire will work its way over to here and up through the first floor. And then when you find the stairways, let's put the stairways into the second floor. Okay, that didn't work.
Frozen marker.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just say, yeah, this was the stairway to the second floor, and it went up like that. Okay, so there it is going up like that. If the fire is able to work its way over here, sure, it's got the first floor right here, and it's already out the way to the second floor. Another old saying in the fire service is that if you save the stairway, you can save the building, because your lines are in position to be mobile and knock that fire down. The other thing is venting, understanding how the fire is running through the building. You need roof work here. You also need this window taken out right here.
The gable window.
That gable window. That
It's a good
guy's
place
gotta
to
come
start,
out.
yeah.
Right, okay. Now here's the other thing, like in the city, and any place that has double deckers. Jeff was talking about the fire that he had, Jeff Rothmeyer, last night, the stairways were in the back, okay? So if the fire is in the back, do you want to take that window on the front? Not right now, because if the fire's going up that rear wall, then you want to keep it in the back. That's that whole thing about venting for fire, venting to keep that fire channeling up and out of the building. And you don't want to draw or knock this window out first, where the fire goes up, it hits that wall in the back, and guess what? It can't go anywhere, but it's got a free path. Like we said, fire's going to take the path of least resistance, and next thing you know, you've got fire pulled across the attic.
You mentioned least resistance. One of a good telltale for a basement fire, John mentioned it on the last basement fire you were going to, where you're driving up and you mentioned to the tailboard, there's smoke coming out of the chimney.
Yep.
And it's not your typical, like,
Right, yeah.
Wisp of gray
18th.
smoke.
It's
Right?
the middle of July. Why are they
You
not
got
the
black
first?
smoke, like a column out of a chimney. That's because the basement's so charged and pressurized with smoke that it's pushed into the HVAC system, and it's going right up into the chimney and exhausting.
Yep.
That's
So you want to add to it?
No.
Well, no, talk about your younger firefighter, because this is a mentor teaching a mentoree moment. Seriously.
I just mentioned to him that the smoke was coming out, and I left it at that, assuming that everyone understood what that meant. After the fire asked him why he didn't go to the basement, he had no idea why he should go to the basement.
Yeah.
I said, well, the smoke coming out the chimney. He says, I don't know what that means. He does now.
Yeah. Well, again, this is
Right.
something we could throw into something like this, a little training session like this, a little jawbone session. You're the senior man, you're talking to this younger firefighter, he learned something from you, and that's the importance of that moment right there, passing on that knowledge that you've picked up along the way in your experiences and so forth. That's what this job is really supposed to be about anyhow. So, but also, again, depending on how big this is and your line going down there, keep the stairway clear. I think we mentioned that before. Keep the stairway clear, let that nozzle man work down there and so forth. Keep the top of the stairway open. Don't put a bunch of guys up there. Look, their breathing apparatus is working fine up here. This guy, he wants that stuff to vent. We want that stuff to vent. So don't block air path or anything like that once he starts attacking a fire. Okay, so this is the thing about opening up the walls. Okay, and again, that's the other thing. Hooks, axes, Halligans, things like that. Older buildings mean the fire can go up this stud wall and go that way and that way. That's balloon framing right there, all right? So, if you have an axe, but especially if you got a Halligan, okay? This tool right here, let me see if I can get this down without breaking things, okay? Here's your wall, get a purchase, bash this thing through, get it down in there, lever it out. Just a simple leverage pull like that opens up, especially when we're talking plaster and lath, okay? That it just opens up that stud wall right there. And now you can get a real quick look to see if you got fire in there, or if you got cinders. If you got cinders going up there and no fire, you got fire. It's just that simple, okay? You just do this to the next one and opens it up quickly, all right? You can do the same thing up the wall and so forth. In ceilings in these old houses or these old buildings like this, get your pike pole up there and pull it down that way. So the whole idea is expose it as quickly as you can, as openly as you can, and that hose line should be there with you. And this is a 3-line job, very easily.
Yeah.
This is easily a 3-line job. So to wait to stretch a line in this case, well, then you're playing catch up. So.
Not everybody's gonna have a thermal imaging camera for deciding where to open up. So it becomes more of a being aware of what wall you're on. Hey, you know, if you have communication with that attack crew and they're saying, hey, the fire's in the back of the house, you know, hey, on that Charlie side wall, those are the walls that you're gonna have to be looking to take apart. If you don't have a thermal imaging camera, maybe you put your hand on the wall, the back of your hand on the wall. If it's hot,
How about that?
open it.
Using your senses?
Right,
Are you
so
crazy? And you know what somebody's gonna tell you? You could burn yourself that way. You know,
right.
if you're too worried about that, then you're too worried about being a fireman.
Well, in
That's
this
the job.
case,
The
what we're talking
senses-
is like, you're not in Blotto where it's blacked out, can't see nothing. You're trying to overhaul and find out where this fire is traveling, which channel is it?
Yeah.
Peeling the back of your glove off and putting it on the wall, not a high risk maneuver,
Right.
right?
It's not. Absolutely not.
So, find where the fire is so you can get that second, third line where it needs to go.
Right. So, but yeah, see, this is the other thing about, you know, when you're stretching lines above the fire and above to the second floor, you know, you're gonna have to move that hose line around, okay? And if you find that fire, let's say, for example, the fire's in the studs over here, okay? As we said before, it can head out to the outer part that way. Well, if we have, this is a room here, and here's a room here, be mobile with your hose line. Be mobile. And that's one of the things that the old fire service training manager used to talk about, you know. You hit the fire, you knock it down here, but be mobile with it. And that's what ventilation allows you to do, because you're not groping through the smoke or whatever like that. So that's the key about, we got hose lines laid to where they should be. You just don't leave them in one spot there. While the fire's breaking out over here, well, then move that line that's on the second floor here, over here, to take care of it if necessary, and so forth. So, okay, so the fire gets up into the attic, where do we go from here? Okay, well, it's rolling around up here now, okay? Again, the old principles that were taught. What side is the wind blowing from? You go to the opposite side, because if you open up, let's just say the wind is blowing that direction. All right. If you make the cut here, what's the wind gonna do?
It's gonna push into the attic.
Exactly. It's gonna fan the flames. But if we
Black frozen marker, yeah.
if we open up here, okay, now the fire can vent out that way. And the old thing was, you find the leeward side and you cut the roof or open the roof 6 inches below the ridge, because you didn't want to compromise the ridge. okay? So you always look for that. And that allows the fire, that's all, you know, again, it's like what we talked about before, thermal layering, okay? And as the fire's burning up anyhow, what effect have you just established here by opening the roof? The chimney effect. So you're drawing things up and out. If you've ever been in a situation where you've been pinned to the floor, you got your hose line in there, and man, this heat is right down on you. And it's black and it's hot, and you're throwing water, you're thinking, oh my God, you know, the water's turning to steam as soon as it comes out of the nozzle. It's evaporating. And all of a sudden, ventilation takes place. Oh my God, what a world of difference. It's easier and safer for us to operate under those conditions. That's how important ventilation is and so forth. So, if you were to, let's just change this. And let's say we cut down here, close to the end of the roof, the soffit. What good is that doing? Not
Very
good.
little.
Huh?
Very little.
Very little, because the fire is up in here and it's gonna continue to burn the top of the house off. Because it's got nowhere to go, unless it goes down there. And how do you do that? Okay? You know, this is that thing about, well, we'll set up fans down here and that'll push it out. No, what you'll be doing is pushing the fire right back over and out there, and then you'll continue, once again, to burn the top of the house off. So, this is the misunderstanding about fans, creating drafts, pulling. Where I grew up, the old ladder companies, and that was Canton, were very good with fans. They understood it. You know, fans blow in, fans pull out. You know, and it worked really good. You know, they knew that stuff. You know, but to do it, you know, like for example, somebody out in Utah or Arizona or somewhere else, wherever they come from, says, "Hey, we're gonna introduce fans into the fire." Well, not during fire attack, I hope not. But this is the misunderstanding or the misconception and so forth. And then you get somebody in trouble who's inside because the fire is blowing all around. You don't have water in the fire and things like that. Believe it or not, somebody had the idea. And this is how things get created based on some principle that's not founded, or let's not call it a principle. So when it came out that we're blowing the fire around with fans, somebody said, well, let's introduce a fog nozzle into the fan. So that'll take all that mist in there.
Yep.
Fires come down to gallons per minute. Overwhelming the fire with overwhelming force. Those two things, okay? Simple as that. So trying to make up for avoiding the principles, in many cases, just doesn't work.
Well,
So, how are we doing so far?
yeah, good. A good summarization. I mean, if the coordinated fire attack to me comes down to a pretty, I guess, dumbed down illustration. If you can see the fire, you put water on it. If you can't, you need to ventilate it until you can see it, so you can put water on it. I mean, to me, it's very straightforward.
It allows us to do our job a heck of a lot easier and a lot safer. And this whole thing about venting, I don't know how we ever got away from it. Perhaps when we started putting firefighters in completely encapsulated suits with air SCBA, we were safer, we were breathing easier. I guess we forgot about the fire or the people who might be trapped in a fire, what they're up against. So, I don't know, maybe we need to go back and always revisit the basics. Always revisit them.
Then ahead of the attack and make a good attack. Yeah. That's it.
Over the fire and around the fire with your wind consideration, things like that. So, just so many things to consider.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All right, good whiteboard.
All right, cool.
All right, gents, keep up with us on strategicfiretraining.com, and hopefully we'll be running into you sooner than later.
Yeah. Let's hope. We got a couple people or a couple places that are being optimistic that we'll be doing stuff this fall. So, hey, give us a call. We're out there.
All right, now.
All right? Okay.
Take care.
See you.